Mr. Secretary, I'm pleased to have you before our committee. This is an extremely important line of questioning. I want to start the way I've started every time you've appeared before this committee, to tell you how proud I am of you, how pleased I am the President appointed you to this position, because your character and integrity are unquestioned, and our country needs a leader like this to help us figure out what happened, why it happened, and the way forward. I also want to compliment you and the President for not running and hiding, for not retreating, and for restating the importance of this country continuing to press forward to identify the resources necessary for our economy to function and our nation to be energy secure. If there was ever an opportunity to run out the back door on offshore oil and gas drilling or expanded drilling, this was it. You have not. You have taken the measured and right approach, in my opinion, to stop all permitting until a significant investigation can take place and then find a way to move forward. And I want to compliment you on that and your team. I also want to say, for the record, having witnessed the response in the Gulf, that it has been thorough, it has been comprehensive, not only from Minerals Management, but the Coast Guard. Unlike past disasters that have occurred when not only mid-management wasn't sent, trainees were sent down, this President has sent his cabinet time and time again for the last 3.5 weeks. His undersecretaries and his cabinet have been on the ground. The people of the Gulf Coast appreciate that. One of my questions is, and I would ask the members of this committee, before they're so quick to criticize others, to think if the members of this committee have themselves been out on an offshore oil and gas rig, either in the shallow water or the deep. I know this senator has tried to take dozens and have succeeded in taking dozens of new appointees and assistant secretaries and secretaries, myself, to see this industry because of its importance to the nation and its importance to be regulated correctly. So I want to just mention that and ask the members of the committee, if you haven't yourself, to please take the opportunity to visit one of these massive platforms in the Gulf. There have been 42,000 wells drilled and over 2,000 deep water wells drilled in the last 31 years. My question, Mr. Secretary, is this. The people of Louisiana that support this industry, support this initiative off of our coast, we most certainly want it to be safe and more secure. We are horrified by this accident. We're also managing a delta, as you know, that loses every 38 minutes a coastal marsh the size of a football field. Decades of mismanagement, not only by inadequate regulation of this industry, but also lack of investment in the delta itself, has caused this to be one of the most pronounced ecological and humanitarian disasters. Oil being spilled on a marsh that is already fragile and weakened. You've flown over it many times yourself. The weakened marsh allows oil to penetrate more deeply, killing vegetation, destroying habitat. Once the marshy vegetation dies, the natural eroding forces of the ocean quickly turn soil into open water, eroding our natural levee system. You helped me to pass the Domenici-Landrieu Gulf of Mexico Act, Mr. Secretary, that helped to try to begin to redirect some of the billions of dollars that are generated by taxes out in the Gulf to help Louisiana coast and the Gulf Coast. I am going to request acceleration of revenue sharing today. I would ask you for your comments about the needs for the Gulf Coast states to have the resources necessary to join in the protection of our marshes when and if situations like this occur. Will you give positive comments? Will you be able to support that initiative?
Senator Landrieu, I think that at the end of the day, one of the things that will come out of this will be that there is the need to have an intense focus on what is happening in the Gulf. It is, in fact, if you will, the oil bowl of the United States of America, and the impacts on its coasts have been significant. You and I have flown over the coastal areas on many different occasions, and we see the erosions and the need for doing rechanneling on the Mississippi River to undo what happened in the past with the Corps of Engineers and the rebuilding of the marshes, et cetera. That doesn't happen by itself. I'm proud of the work which the President and his team have done in terms of the Gulf Coast restoration, in terms of what has now become the template for ecosystem restoration on the Everglades. And there is no doubt in my mind that one of those crown jewels of environment and restoration is, in fact, the Gulf Coast. And so we need to find a way of moving forward. It is incredibly important to the entire Gulf Coast region. And within the Department of Interior, it is important to note that, yes, we have responsibility with respect to MMS and the issues that we are dealing with now. But in addition to that, Senator Landrieu, in the Gulf alone, we have 40 national wildlife refuges and national parks, all of which contribute significantly to the wildlife mission of America, as well as to the national parks and recreation missions. So we look forward to joining with you in a way that we will work closely with you and other members of the Congress in finding a way forward with respect to Gulf Coast restoration.
Thank you. And the final thing I'll say, because I've got to go to vote, but I hope that this incident, I'm confident it will give us a new look at the issue. These are federal resources. There's no doubt. This oil was 50 miles off the shore of Louisiana. Our state boundaries end at 6 miles. But 100% of the risk is right now being absorbed by the states of Mississippi, Texas, Louisiana, Florida, and if this oil travels up the Atlantic, also other coastal states. So I hope this gives us not only a new vision to regulate more carefully, but also to share the risk and rewards of what we're doing more fairly with the states. And I thank you, Mr. Secretary. Just a final point in question, following up on some colleagues' comments about risk. When we view offshore drilling in isolation, it does appear risky. And the fact, Mr. Secretary, is that it is risky. But I think the fair question is it riskier to import 100% of the oil this country needs, or to try to drill more safely at home? What would the answer to that question be? Is it riskier to import 100% of our oil because we're importing close to 70%, or is it less risky to try to drill more safely at home?
I think, Senator Landrieu, I think it's a very good question, and that is why the President's comprehensive energy plan contemplates that oil and gas, as well as nuclear, are part of that future energy portfolio. We need to have a balance, but we also need to break the addiction that this country has had to oil for so many decades. And again, I know you and Senator Bingaman have been involved in bipartisan efforts to move forward the President's comprehensive energy plan. You have your plan. This is probably a time for this country to come to grips with the risks associated concerning our current energy consumption. And you are putting your finger on what one of those risks is, and that is the national security of the United States and the fact that we are importing our oil from places that don't have the best interest of this country in mind.
And finally, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your patience in extending this committee by almost 30 minutes. But it's also important, this liability issue. The people of Louisiana and the Gulf Coast want to know and have confidence that BP is going to do everything that they are required to under the law and more to pay for any damage to individuals, to businesses, et cetera. And I want to submit to the record a letter that was received by BP to the other committee that I sit on, Homeland Security, in that regard. But the question of this liability issue going forward, I want to commend you for taking your time to decide on the right answer, because if we don't do this correctly, we could put independents and smaller companies that employ 1.8 million people in this country at risk if this issue isn't handled correctly. So with all due respect to my colleague, who I have the utmost admiration for, Senator Menendez and others that are calling for unlimited liability, it will put out of reach the possibility for insurance, which is extremely important for this and any industry to have, to operate. So it has to be done in the right way, and I thank you for taking your time on the details of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.